I got a good question for you today. What's a good environment to experience gong bass? Online gong bass or real gong bass? And before that, please subscribe our video and give a thumb up. We got more interesting story to share with you.
Well, you know, Yiling, I think this is a question that many gong players and many enthusiasts for gong bars actually don't really consider too much. There's kind of an obvious answer that it wants to be peaceful and quiet. You don't want disturbing noises going on outside the space that you're in, which is going to interfere with your enjoyment. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. But it can be quite difficult to find in this day and age.
You can find a totally quiet place.
There's no such thing really in a way. And I think one thing that you can consider is if you're using big gongs, in fact, we've just experienced this ourselves, playing in places where you've got kind of noises off. As soon as the gongs come in, well, if you're playing sort of little singing bowls and smaller introductory instruments that people often play at the beginning of gong bars, we all do this. Gong players all often play little tinkly chimes and this kind of stuff. Then any extraneous noise from outside is going to be really noticeable. As soon as the gongs come in, the big gongs this is, it's amazing the way that they kind of blanket out a lot of the sound.
The volume.
It's not just volume, Yiling. I think it's also the nature of the characters of the sound. You know, it kind of blankets this. We've talked about this often. This thick. There's this lovely word that that my gong teacher gong uses, pleroma or bouquet. This thick sound that the gongs make, full of resonance, full of multi-harmonics, that kind of blankets out sounds that you don't like. So they're very handy actually at doing that. So at the same time, you know, I mean, if you're on a noisy road outside and in the summertime when people have got the windows open, it can be a problem.
Okay.
So noise, tranquil is important. Natural sounds can be great though.
We always say that if they are in the noisy city, they can shut the window, pull the blind. You know,
it really can help. It really can help. But I was just going to move on and say that not all noises are disruptive. Where we're shooting this from, outside of Taipei, in the sort of, I mean, some of the birds are a bit noisy. And, you know, not all bird song is kind of sweet and nice to hear. But, I mean, in general, the sounds of, you know, some sounds and thunderstorms aren't terribly useful, I think, in the middle of gong bars. But there are many sounds of nature that are quite pleasant and that are not going to disrupt you. Rivers flowing by and many birds singing can be quite pleasant. So not all noise is disruptive. Now this idea about let's move on from noise, which I think people kind of got a good fix on anyway. I think let's move on from that to this idea that you have to be in a darkened room. This is sort of it's a kind of it's this idea that, you know, they have these, they used to be really popular. I'm not quite sure how popular they are now. Sensory deprivation tanks. Have you ever heard of those?
What's that?
There are these tanks that you go in. I mean, literally a tank. That you go in.
Tank.
And often it's in water. You're floating in this kind of, often a salt water. I'm not an authority on this. Please, viewers, if you know something about this. But I mean, the idea is that your other senses are being deprived so that you're just kind of spaced out in this darkness. And I think it helps to be in a I don't think we need absolute darkness. I mean, I actually think...
You can play the gong in the dark.
Well, indeed, the gong player is funny, difficult. So, I mean, lowered, not bright lights, I think is good. Lowered lights, muted lights is good. Some gong players love to work with candlelight, and candlelight can be beautiful.
Yeah.
But then we have so many
natural light,
natural light,
light.
And natural light. If it's bright sunlight, can be a bit distracting, I think. But the idea that we need to be in darkness, I think, is not necessary.
Not totally dark, but yeah.
Now, I'd like to move on to another thing, which is how are we. The classic idea for a gong bath is lying down, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gong baths, you're lying down and you're allowed. Well, this is what I was going to ask you. But I mean, lying down, the classic idea of the gong bath is that you're being washed by this sound. And I mean, it's funny because I've always thought it was a great name for what we do, the gong bath, being bathed in the sound. Well, you kind of lie down and of course, the other thing about lying down is the moment that you lie down, provided it's sort of relatively comfortable, it's not a really hard floor and you're on some thin yoga mat that you're going to have to lie on for an hour. Some kind of experienced yoginis have no problem with that, but many people do, and it can be a problem. But if you're lying down, generally we're kind of get into a relaxed state of mind, and it's very important, the relaxation and being comfortable. But you've got your own theory about what sitting up is. So would you like to say something about that?
When I sit up, I feel more sensitive about the vibrations. When I lie down, very relaxing, soothing, and many times I just unconscious. But what's the point here?
Well, this is it. You see, now we're getting onto this thing about when people, what do you do when you're lying down? What do people associate lying down with? You generally going to sleep. And this, again, is one of your, or doze, and this is one of your other bugbears, And I actually agree with you, Eileen. I mean, I think that I tend to use the distinction between gong baths and gong meditations when you're sitting up in a kind of a meditative pose. But I certainly think that that you're less likely to go to sleep if you're sitting up, and you're more likely to be alert to the possibilities of where it can take you.
We're talking about the environment.
Well, that's part of the environment. I mean, if you're going to lie down, are you going to be comfortable on the floor? On a hard floor? If not, then make sure you've got something comfortable to lie on, even if it's just we can't all wander around camping mattresses and things, but I mean, blankets and so on can really help.
Yeah. So, what you say about the noise and the light, and also the lie down or sit up comfortably. The three things, major three things, mainly is for not only for the gong bath. I mean, the live gong bath, and also can apply to listen to music, CD or MP3 or Wi-Fi. We got a lot of Wi-Fi or MP3 about gong and gong bath. And also online gong baths these days, very popular.
We cannot have conversations about this stuff without referencing the situation that many people are in these this dreadful lockdown term, but isolated in their own spaces, I like to prefer to call it. But I mean, it means that we've got to look at other alternatives to going to live gong bath events, and the same rules apply actually, Ling. If you're listening to a well-recorded gong CD, or you're experiencing a online gong bath, these same kind of rules apply. The only thing I would say is that I think
about the volume, how loud,
and also how you're going to play it, whether it's on headphones or loudspeakers. I think some of that is one of the good things about headphones is that you know these noise cancelling headphones. Do you know
that's good.
The ones that are particularly useful on people use them particularly on flights on airplanes because of the noisy aircraft engines, or on commutes, you know, on noisy metros. And they can be really useful if you've got noisy neighbour, you know, if you've got this kind of what we talked about at the beginning, these non-tranquil environments, you've got somebody banging next door or whatever it is, noisy traffic, then noise cancelling headphones can be great for listening to gong CDs and experiencing online gong baths. I really recommend looking at those actually as an option.
And another thing I want to add on is that when people got no matter MP3 or CD at home about gong baths or whatever, want to do the sound therapy, I would suggest them to turn their mobile off and be in the flow. We have an experience. Do you remember we went to do one-to-one to a young guy and he kept browsing his mobile. Really. I really like to tell him that it's not work.
Indeed.
It's not working for people. He didn't rest his mind. He's just very busy mind. Even we are paid to play the gong for him, right? You remember? And he just...
You know, it's funny because I think that's one of the appeals for people in this day and age for gong baths, because you know, he was the guy that Ealing is talking about was a kind of a co-opted into this one-to-one environment. It wasn't by his choice. I think this was the point. He was going along. We won't go too deep into that. But I mean, most people who are experiencing either one-to-one sound therapies or gong bars actually enjoy the fact that they get out, they can step out of this kind of ridiculously fast, moving, rolling attention that you're supposed to have to everything all the time with their mobile phones and their this and their that. And often in these lockdown situations, we forget that often people are in family situations where there's all these other distractions, kids and what have you, all going on. And finding tranquil spaces can actually be quite an issue.
Not only tranquil, also it's very important to be yourself. Of course, your family, like your husband or your adult kids, can go with gong baths with you, online gong baths or the MP3. But just be, that time is booked or reserved, particularly for relaxing, for meditative.
This is one of those subjects you could actually talk for a long time on. But there was one thing that I wanted to point out before we close, and it's to do with this. I actually think that this is a big change, and that there's going to be a lot more emphasis on people experiencing the gongs in their own homes, online or with recorded CDs and so on, just because of the present situation with the coronavirus and everything. It's really going to make a change. And I think one of the things I wanted to say was that it's really, if you have your family at home or your friends at home, you can create a group energy there that you get when you go to live.
My subscribers,
and I think this is really something. Their families, and you can have, if you. I don't have this, but I'm aware when we go to these stores and we see these giant TVs with all their, surround sound speakers, that many people have these things in their homes. And we have actually done online gong baths to actually we did it to a rehab centre recently, a couple of gong baths where there was a group of people and they all, like half a dozen or more people in a rehab centre in lockdown, and they all experienced it together as a sort of a group therapy on a TV with these big speakers. And there we go. I mean, maybe this is the future, but how about that as an environment that would be a really interesting one, that you can actually use the visual aspects of the online gong bath as well. We're traditionally thought of not to look at what's going on, that it's distracting in a normal live gong bath. But perhaps with online gong baths, certainly is something that we think is important, don't we? The visual aspect. You can sit in a comfortable chair and kind of enjoy the visuals, I think, of it. And I think that's another environment, some changing environment. Things are changing.
And here is a QR code that if you are fancy about our online gong baths, please check. We got many good videos to share with you, full length. And yes.
And also, we've got many good CD and CD quality audio gong bars to share. And not just gong bars, I mean, sound therapeutically based recordings of all sorts. I mean, many.
Now we check. I got 2 QR codes. Okay, here are the short clips.
Information down below as well. There will be information down below, as they say.
And here are the short clips. It's essence, short clips from the real gong bars, online gong bars.
Online gong bar. Yes,
very short clips.
Enjoy, viewers.
Yeah. We see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye.